Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Campbell with the Dog Gurus. We are live on Facebook. If you can hear me, would somebody be willing to drop a note in the chat so that we know that we are actually live and that you can hear and see us? Today, Shante Marquez is with me. She is our new business development guru, and we're excited to have her joining the Dog Gurus team as an employee. If you are not familiar with the Dog Gurus, we are a pet care business consulting company. We help pet care businesses launch, grow, and profit. And thank you, Mickey, from the House of Hounds. We are live and she can see us. So we offer pet care consulting and staff training programs to pet care businesses. And we are going to be talking today about hiring. And Shante is going to let us know. She watched this fantastic webinar. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat so that we can answer them for you.
Yeah, well, I'll start off by, I know hiring and staffing has been a huge issue the past couple of years, especially after 2020. And, when I was a business owner, I often was in this perpetual cycle of reactive hiring. And I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this or not, but I also call it panic hiring because I would lose a couple employees or one employee and I'd be slammed and I would just knee-jerk reaction and just hire a warm body to like step into the business and just get stuff done. And what that did was actually hurt me a lot more than helped me because I ended up really just not hiring the right fit for my facility or that specific role. And they would be short-term employees, whether they would last maybe a month, 3 months, less than 6 months kind of thing. And that really cost my business a ton of money and just took a lot of effort and just wear and tear on my management team. But until I really took a look at how I was hiring and maybe my system and refining my system of hiring, did I get myself out of that perpetual cycle. So like Carrie said, I watched a webinar from somebody else last week and they were talking about hiring and it was for a salesperson, like how to hire the right salesperson. But I found that a lot of those same things that he was talking about we could use for all of our hiring in our business. So, when you hire somebody, you really want to make sure that you look at your job descriptions and from that job description, create a set of standard of questions that really fit what that role is. So you know what you're specifically looking for, as well as think about the culture and, the feel of working in your shop because you need to have somebody that fits that personality as well. But once you kind of create this standardized like questions and grading system for your interview process, then you can really compare each candidate thoughtfully and on the same like level ground. And I felt that that really helped me identify who was best fit for the job and who wasn't. Carrie, do you have any input on that in your experience?
No, I completely agree. And I think that having a very clearly defined job description that you can review even in the interview process so that you are looking at what the expectations will be for that employee and that specific position. I watched the webinar that you sent me the link to, and I enjoyed how he was describing the difference of, a great person versus, a not great person, but it really has more to do with expectations and really outlining clearly what the role is that that potential candidate or hired employee will be filling for your facility. So are there any questions coming in from the chat? Not seeing any at this time. So
One of the other nuggets that I did get from that webinar is that, and this is something that we discussed with some of the members at our workshop, our live workshop that we did in Galveston recently for our Profit Network members. But there was one member that was talking about she's having a really hard time finding somebody with the experience of the role as well as the soft skills of the management, and they're kind of starting from ground zero. And she's like, well, I don't, how am I supposed to put this person as a manager when they have nothing, they don't have any experience working in the pet care industry? And one of the things that this gentleman said was, you need to hire people that have the potential to do a really great job at your facility. So they don't necessarily need to have that experience, but they need to have the potential to be able to learn what you want to teach them. And I thought that was extremely valuable information and a great way to look at it, because then your pool of candidate opens up much greater.
We used to always say that you can't train a work ethic. You can't train somebody to show up on time, but you can train them the dog handling aspect. So, there's a lot of elements of what we do that are very trainable, but getting those core, kind of values that you want in an employee are what you need to hire for. And Mikey has a question from House of Hounds. Where do people post jobs to? We're using Indeed and Facebook right now, but Facebook has changed and stopped doing job ads. So if there's anybody else out there, or Shante, what were you using in your facility?
We used Indeed, but I know that a lot of my clients use Applicant Pro, and they've had a lot of great success with that. For me, at the time, it was just a little too expensive for me, but I know that they're giving some discounting pricing right now or whatnot. So that's a good option to take a look at. But what I did use Applicant Pro for was I had them professionally write my classified ad, which was a game changer. And it was very inexpensive, but basically they made it sound it made the job sound really fun and a really desirable place to work at, because nowadays, we kind of have to sell the position to the employees. It's not like it used to be. When I first started running my business, I had a ton of people and I had my pick of the helm, to find employees. But nowadays there's a lot of jobs looking for employees. So it's very competitive, and we have to sound extremely attractive to the employees. So we want to make it sound as fun as possible with not, you don't want to lie about it, but they can help you write an ad and be very successful with it.
Absolutely. We used Applicant Pro when we were hiring for employees. And one of the things that I like about Applicant Pro is that there are multiple stages that you can do in the applying process. They have requirements that you can click on, that they have to take certain assessments. So if you're looking for a certain type of individual. And then one of the others that I thought was really interesting was that you can make the candidate submit a short video. And usually the people who submit videos, when you can see them before you actually bring them into your facility, there's some elements about their personality that you can kind of tell right away whether they may work within your specific culture. So Applicant Pro does offer a lot of different varying tools for the applicant process and the screening process, because you can definitely check boxes that say, you want them to have, a driver's license, you want them to have a minimum, 2 years experience in some sort of capacity with animals, even if it's in a volunteer capacity. But there's just so many options and choices that you can select in that process, that it makes it a little easier to start filtering out some of the candidates. And I agree, Shante, when you were saying that the ability for them to write your ad, they have some great writers on staff. And I think sometimes we tend to get mired down in the idea of, oh, this is what we need from you. And it sounds a little stern and not as upbeat. And when they kind of just put their flavor to it, it comes across as being much more fun and engaging. So that's a great aspect too. And I think when we first joined, that they offered that one ad as like a bonus of freebie. So we didn't have to pay for that first ad that they wrote for us.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
it was great.
Excellent.
Edmund says that he's using Applicant Pro and it's a great help. Barkside Lodge just said, we just signed up for Applicant Pro last week. If you use Indeed regularly, the cost will work out because you can list as many jobs as you want for as long as you want, all under that flat rate, which is great. That's good to know. And anytime you can have some sort of assistance within that application process is definitely going to make it easier for you, so that you're not actually having to go through 60 applicants by yourself, if you're fortunate enough to have that many.
Yeah. Well, and I love the idea that they can have the candidates set up the little videos, because that probably cuts down your time on screening through the applicants. Because to me, if somebody went out and put the time in to put a video, then those are the people that I'm going to consider first, right? And then move forward. But I love that option. And I know that one of our other clients uses that technique a lot, and she has a lot of great success with it, especially if you're going to be hiring for a customer service type or, employee or front desk, something like that. You want to see how they present themselves and how they speak and how they look.
Another option, if right now your business is smaller and Applicant Pro may not be a viable option or affordable right now, is you can, when people apply, I would say probably 99% of people are listing a cell phone on their application because that's people's main source of communication. But you could do a short text video and text it to them and see what they respond back with. And if they come up with a cute video, then that's a way that you could screen them before bringing them in for a live in-person video interview. So just
Yeah, I
a
love that.
thought there, just to make it a little bit more affordable. Is there anything else that you got from the webinar, Shante, that you found valuable?
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting that, when you're hiring for a position, you really need to think about each position individually and the personality types that it takes. Because if I'm hiring for a reservation specialist, that's more of a sales role. That's going to be a different personality type than I'm hiring for front desk, which is very much customer service and a people pleaser type job. So, when I would be interviewing for that, my questions were very different from those interviews for my customer service person versus my reservation specialist. So keep that in mind. And of course, if I'm going to be hiring somebody that's going to be a pet care counselor, well, that's a completely different role too. And they had to be able to, handle in loud environments all day long, being on their feet, working in sometimes what feels like a very chaotic environment. So those were some of the questions that we answered. We asked them, and we always had a one part of the interview was we were said that, hey, we're going to give you a scale between 1 and 5, and we want you to rate yourself on where you fit with this. And one of the questions would be is, how do you work in chaotic and loud environments? But another great technique is really, having them do a trial day with you and seeing how that goes. I know a lot of people do that and that works well. And you can kind of see how they handle the pups and react to the different sizes and the different breeds, because that's a huge thing in our industry. And if you take care of cats too, I mean, I always had people that they were awesome with dogs, but they wanted nothing to do with cats. And some of those roles you had to work with both. So that was good to find out as well.
That's great. Yeah, and I think a lot of it just does go back to having that foundation in place of a good, solid job description for each of the positions you're hiring for. It does make me think that being specific in what the job duties are, because, somebody who's doing sales, they need to be articulate. They need to be able to handle questions and the different responses that need to be given when somebody is asking a question about services. Or if you're looking at somebody who is a customer service person who may be at the front desk, they may not be in such a physical job as someone who's a pet care attendant. And so being specific about, the ability to lift certain weight, or that you have to interact with cats and dogs, or that you have to, interact with big dogs and little dogs. It's always interesting when people come in and they, why do you want to work here? I love dogs, or I love this. And you're like, oh, it's a different setting than just loving animals. So having those specific tasks or requirements in the job description is really key.
And that just reminds me, when you ask them, one of the other things that he did mention is when you ask them, why did you apply for this job? If they give very vague responses, then they really are just looking for a job, not the job. So, and that goes true with a lot of the different questions that they ask. You really want the candidates to be very specific on their questions. That's how I kind of also weeded out who was giving me fluff and who actually did have the experience that we were seeking, or maybe the attributes that we were seeking. If they're more specific about their responses, then that they're a good candidate and they can stand behind their word.
Yeah, that's very true. I know when we would hire, we would often look if someone had previous experience at another facility in our area. And in some cases, when you hire someone that has worked at another facility, you spend a lot of time kind of untraining bad habits. And so sometimes when you look for the right person, they may fit a lot of the check boxes that you want, but they may not have that, animal handling experience. And that is the side that you can train if you have your onboarding process in place. But like I said earlier, you can't train a good work ethic, or you can't train people to show up on time. And those are the things that when you find that candidate, being able to train them in the areas that they may not have the experience, you can at least train them on how you do things specifically in your facility, and you're not necessarily kind of undoing some bad habits that they may have. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the main thing is, you should really be prepared when you're hiring. Create a system that works for you, a screening system, and then, when you do the in-person interview, and have a set of questions that are standard questions, so you can compare apples to apples when you are trying to hire somebody.
Samantha just commented that breaking bad habits is harder than training fresh, and that's so true.
That is true. That is true.
So Shante, when you had your facility, just thinking about some of the people that are kind of in our audience that watch these live videos, did you find that in the early phases, when you were more working in the business rather than on the business, that when you started hiring and you were able to step back and have management in place, that it was difficult to have management do the hiring? Or do you have any tips on that as far as kind of training maybe a new supervisor or manager on the hiring process?
Well, because we created this evaluation system, they had the papers there that they can follow, but there was a length of time that I had them join me so they could see my interview style and then learn from that, of course. And you know what? When they started doing it on their own, I would just observe and I would do my best to zip it, even though that's hard for me sometimes. But and let them take the wheel at it, but really just letting them try and letting them, if they thought they did a good job or they didn't think they did a good job, after a few times, they didn't even want me there. They were like, no, I got this. And it also helped when my managers started to do the interview process. It helped to give them a certain level of respect when that employee came on too, which was really, really helpful. So I think that I gave them the correct tools to be able to learn how to do it in their own time. And they picked it up pretty quick.
That's great.
So
I was just on a previous call and we were talking about the whole art of delegation, and that sometimes it isn't done exactly the way you would have done it, but sometimes it's actually done better. So putting those tools in place and empowering the people that you have put in your leadership team to be able to do that is great. So.
Yeah, and sometimes it just takes like natural inquisitiveness of finding out more about somebody when they answer a question a certain way. That was one of the things that I did teach my staff. It's like, you don't have to, you want to ask these questions, but you can ask more questions if you see them answer a certain thing that intrigues you. Being inquisitive is really important when you're hiring as well, because you can kind of dig into something a little more specific. You don't want to lead your candidates to answer the questions a certain way, but you want to really ask them, let them answer. And then if there's something that piques more or kind of is a flag to you, you can dig in a little bit further.
That's true. I used to love when I was interviewing a candidate and I could hear by their questions that they were actually starting to visualize themselves in the role, so that their questions were much more in depth. And that's when I would want to take a deeper dive and kind of vary from my list of standard questions, because I could see that they were really starting to visualize themselves working for us. So that's great.
Yeah, they really want to work there.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So that's really cool. It's very cool. Does anybody have questions for us while we're talking?
We say that and then it takes a few seconds to type. So excellent. Has anyone else had some specific issues with hiring that they are working on, or that they've had success in certain areas? Great. Well, are there any other tips that you learned from the webinar, Shante, that you want to share or that we talked about?
Let's see. There was, a couple things. We all want to get references from their previous jobs, but we know that that's difficult because we can only ask certain questions.
Mhm.
But one of the things is that he said if you do talk to a previous employer, you can ask a reference question in a manner of what type of culture would they best fit in, and then that would give them that would give you a little bit more insight if they're going to fit with your culture. Also, if they're working at a previous job still, they're still employed. One of the things that you can ask them is, let me see, it was, what would your current employer have to do to keep you to stay? And what that question does is that helps you find out what their motivators are. So if it's more money, or if it's, they didn't feel valued, or they didn't get along with, there were some personality conflicts, that will give you a little bit more insight to what's going on with that employee and why they're choosing to leave. And I thought that was an awesome question too. Yeah, what could your current employer do to get you to stay? Something,
Yeah.
it was something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think, when my manager used to ask, if I called your former employer today, what kind of employee would they say you are? And that was like, and you would get a very different answer sometimes than what you may hear if you called for a reference. But I think partly when you're asking a question that they have to answer directly about what their former employment experience was, that you're asking something that they have to elaborate on that may not be as comfortable, or it's forcing them to be a little more truthful than how they may paint their prior experience.
mhm, absolutely.
Well, we have a few minutes left, so if there are any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. And while we have a pause here, I'll let you know that we do have a Facebook group called Grow Your Pet Care Business that is open to anyone who would like to join. I will put that link in the chat here. We do have two rules, and that is that you have to be nice to each other and you can't sell anything. So if we see that you're trying to sell a product, we will kick you out of the group. But other
And
than, oh,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to also mention that while we have a couple minutes, the next couple Facebook Live topics that we have. So next week, which is April 19th, we're going to talk about onboarding systems. So now that you've made that great hire, it's really important to make a good first impression on the employee. And one way to do that is to have an awesome onboarding system that's organized and prepared. And then the following week, April 26th, on Wednesday, we're going to talk about performance feedback systems. So now that you've had that employee working for you, how do you make sure that the morale is still up and they're happy? And one way to do that is really by having a performance feedback system in place, so you have good communication, and the employee feels valued and heard, which is huge.
That's great. I love the fact that we're kind of sticking with a theme throughout the month. So, if that is something that people are interested in, if there's any kind of topics that you would like us to chat on over the next few months, please drop that in as well. Or you can always email support@thedoggurus.com, and we will be able to answer any questions that you have there, as well as take a look at some of the suggested topics you may have. So, great. We do offer a performance feedback system. That's something that Robin and Susan developed a few years ago. So if you go to thedoggurus.com under our store, that is something that is available. And with all of the information that we like to talk about, it's driven by you, the pet care facility owners, or those who are looking to open a facility, so that we're able to share information that's valuable to all of you. So definitely reach out and let us know if there's something that we can help you with in the future, or if there are topics that you would like us to discuss.
Yeah, and there's job description books too that you
That's
guys
right. Yeah.
available.
That really is a strong foundation piece. So yeah, I like how the fact that these Facebook Lives are going to build on all of that. So and just making your work environment or your culture more fun, because when you have that opportunity to make the day to day something that's more enjoyable for the employees, it makes the whole environment better. So, oh, and Mike just said thank you. So, you're very welcome. We love being able to chat with you all. So, well, if there is no other questions, then we can jump off for today. But do feel free to join that Grow Your Pet Care Business web or Facebook group if you are not a member. And what is it? Oh, thank you, Jordan.
He says Carrie's the best boss.
Oh, that's funny. So, yeah, it was a good run, right, Jordan? Always to hear about the presented material. Thanks, Edmund. We appreciate you being here, and it was great seeing you in Galveston. So yeah, have a wonderful week, everyone, and join us next week when we are going to talk about onboarding systems. And I'm just really thrilled that Shante was here to join me. She's going to be doing a lot more of these Facebook Lives, and just really happy to have her on our team and to be able to tap into her knowledge and experience. So,
Thank you.
you're so welcome. Have a great day, everyone.